Welcome back to another team selection video ahead of Game Week 24. We've got many blanks and doubles on the horizon. We just went through one in Game Week 23, which I'll review in this video before moving on to my transfer plans and also my team selection for Game Week 24. The other day we reached 18,000 subscribers during the UCL Fantasy Deadline stream, so thank you very much to all subscribers, channel members, patrons, and everyone else who's been supporting the channel. Let's try to get this video to over 300 likes, and we're going to be on the way and on course towards 20,000 subscribers as well. That's going to be the next kind of big target, of course. We'll take it step by step, but thank you very much. And without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. This was without a doubt the worst week in terms of my backline, starting with Kepa Arrizabalaga in goal in the first game with a 2-pointer. He was very frustrating in this one, but he has a lot of credit in the bank with all his big hauls in recent weeks, and I wasn't really expecting a clean sheet from Chelsea anyway, regardless of what has happened in recent weeks, and they have been looking better, especially from a defensive point of view, but they're not always going to keep clean sheets, and there will be these 2 or 3 pointers sometimes that Kepa will get, but whenever Chelsea do keep that clean sheet, I'm very, very sure that he's going to be in and amongst the bonus points and also get some saves as well. So still happy with Kepa Arrizabalaga. My main concerns are with the defenders. Regardless of his double game week, Ben White and all Arsenal defenders were very frustrating. Ben White didn't even start the second game against Man City, and this was not a real big surprise. I was talking about this over the last week, where if there was to be a change in the Arsenal lineup, I would actually be more confident of Tomiyasu coming in for Ben White than I would with Trossard in for Martinelli, especially because of the way City play. Martinelli could still thrive in that. Of course, he didn't. And as for Ben White versus Tomiyasu, it does make sense, and I could understand that. Ben White has also been off form in recent games, but it was Tomiyasu who made the mistake for the first City goal, and you probably wonder and probably expect the likes of Ben White to come back into the team. I would expect more changes in other positions though in the weeks to come, but I think Ben White will come back into the side, and let's see if he can maybe build on what he was doing in the first half of the season, where he was giving consistent 7 or 8 out of 10 performances, but against Everton, Man United, and also in recent games as well like Brentford, Ben White hasn't been at the same level as he was. The other defenders include Botman. This was one of the biggest mistakes I've made this week. I trusted Newcastle for the clean sheet, but they conceded very early on before equalising through Miguel Almiron, and Botman also got a yellow card towards the end of the game, and all of this was capped off by the reliable Trippier also getting a 2-pointer. No attack and returns bonus points, no clean sheet. And the most frustrating part of it all was that I benched Luke Shaw against Leeds, and he was in my starting 11 originally. I went for a back 4, but I made one change, and in hindsight, I definitely would have put Shaw over Botman, but there you go. I was backing Newcastle for a clean sheet, and I thought Man United would concede, as they had done just 3 or 4 days before against the same team in Leeds United. But that is the back line. Very disappointing stuff. Despite the double gimmick for Ben White, that's no returns for all 3 of my defenders and my goalkeeper. The saving grace for my team was the midfield. Bukayo Saka with a 15-pointer, tucking away his penalty against Man City. He also got an assist in the game against Brentford to set up Leandro Trossard. And Bukayo Saka hasn't been great in recent games. You know, I think he's been doubled up on a lot by the opposition defenders, and sometimes even tripled up on, like the games against Newcastle earlier in the year. But I still think he's been a bit of a spark in that Arsenal attack. The likes of Odegaard have been faltering. I know he played pretty well against Brentford, but against Everton and Man City, very underwhelming performances. Then you have Martinelli, who sometimes makes some really good runs but is never really found by anyone, and he also isn't coexisting well with Nketiah, not to mention Nketiah himself, who has been missing some really big chances in the last 4 games of all competitions. But Bukayo Saka has still been consistent. The penalties were always a massive boost, and I did take that -4 from Martinelli to Saka. It has paid off, so I'm very happy with that move. Martin Odegaard is someone I brought in last week ahead of that Everton game, and it hasn't paid off so far. He's been pretty poor overall, especially from an FPL perspective. Only a 4-pointer, so at least he got appearance points, no yellow cards. I'll take it, but I'm still expecting much more from him in the weeks to come. And going into Game Week 25 right now, it's clear to see that Saka is the more informed player and thus the better FPL option at this moment in time, especially with penalties also in the mix. That was Arsenal's second penalty of the season, so if they can maybe get a few more of those, then I think Saka's kind of appeal will be boosted even more over the likes of Odegaard, Martinelli, and all other Arsenal forwards and assets. The other 2 midfielders include Mahrez, who did extremely well against Aston Villa with a 12-pointer. A bit underwhelming against Arsenal, but I wasn't really expecting him to haul in both games per se. I'm very happy with that 14-pointer. He was another one that I brought in this week alongside Saka for a -4, in for Bruno Fernandes and Martinelli. So those transfers paid off big time. I made a huge profit off that in just 1 week. My concern with Mahrez now is game weeks 24 and 25. Will he start with Man City playing in the Champions League next week? Let's wait and see. It's a very tough game against Leipzig as well, but I wouldn't be too sure about Mahrez, De Bruyne, or any of these Man City assets being completely nailed on, especially in the defence as well, but there's been a lot of rotation in recent weeks. The final midfielder is Marcus Rashford, the most informed player since the World Cup. Another goal, no bonus points this time, but still happy with that return. And apart from Odegaard, everyone did extremely well, from Saka, Mahrez and Rashford, not to mention Andreas Pereira, also my bench, with a 6-pointer. The most surprising thing for me this week was Harry Kane blanking against his favourite opponents in Leicester, and the big news now for Spurs is that Bentancur will be out for the next 6 to 8 months. Couple that with Hugo Lloris being out for the next 6 to 8 weeks and all the issues Spurs have, it looks like Conte will miss out the next few Premier League games despite featuring and being on the touchline against AC Milan. There are so many issues there with Spurs all of a sudden. They've got a great fixture run and they could still do very well, but I think that injury to Bentancur is absolutely massive. Their most important player behind Harry Kane, who remains a great option, of course, still the second best premium in the game in my opinion, but his appeal has definitely been reduced as a result of all the news coming out recently with Spurs, who have been very unlucky in terms of injuries. But the next two forwards did the job for me. Erling Haaland with an assist against Aston Villa, a great passage of play to set up that goal, and also killing off the game against Arsenal with that third all-important goal there. And he's always going to be in amongst the goals and the action. He was relatively quiet in that game at the Emirates, but he always has that chance. If you give him one chance, he's most likely going to take it. And especially in these home games against weaker opposition, that's where he could do an extremely good job. I know people will be disappointed because they triple captain him, only 10 points, but he's always going to have a good chance of these mega hauls. Sometimes he will not get them, but he can still tick along nicely with consistent returns. Even if it's just a 6 points in a game, so be it. He can still get you those consistent returns you need, and that's why he's going to be our captain most weeks. But there will be opportunities to go against him and go for some more differentials like a Mahrez, Saka, Odegaard, Harry Kane. There will be opportunities in the weeks to come. Are we always going to do it? Maybe not. He's still going to be the most common captain, but it's something to bear in mind, especially when certain teams will have a double whilst Man City won't, like in Gameweek 25. The last forward though is Ivan Toney, who I brought in the last second pretty much of the deadline. I brought him in for Luke Shaw, so I lost out on 3 points as a result. But ultimately, looking at it, the big mistake was probably starting Botman over Shaw. Of course, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I'm still happy with Tony's returns, although maybe not so much from a non-FPL perspective. But maximum bonus points, he got that equaliser against Arsenal, which should have been disallowed, but it was allowed. There we go. Those are the points there for Gameweek 23. Now let me show you what my rank is and all of that good stuff before moving on to the next segment, the team selection for Gameweek 24. Like most of you, I did captain Erling Haaland, and the likes of Bukayo Saka and Mahrez did outscore him. Even Luke Shaw on my bench with a single game week against Leeds did, but still happy with my returns overall, despite going down in rank to around 90,000 in the world from 77k. And I think the main reason why was because of that benching dilemma, which I ultimately got wrong, and Botman was the main culprit there. I got 80 points, but with a -4 hit taken into account, that's 76, and I'm almost at 1,500 points, which I should reach at some point of Gameweek 24. Now, Arsenal have dropped so many points in the last 3 Premier League games with 8, and in the first 19 games of the season, they only dropped 7, so there's been a massive drop-off. But having said that, Saka continues to do pretty well, regardless of the circumstances, and I think he's a great option to captain in Gameweek 25, as we'll discuss later on using FPL.team. But those are my points. Let me know how you did in the comment section down below, and now let's talk about my Gameweek 24 team selection and my proposed transfers. There'll be no doubts for me this week in terms of the goalkeeper. Kepa Arrizabalaga will be at home to Southampton, who don't have a permanent manager set in place. The talks of Jesse Marsch have broken down, and it'll be interesting to see who they end up going with. And it's looking more and more like a poor decision to sack Hasenhüttl and appoint Nathan Jones in the first place. But Kepa Arrizabalaga has a good chance here of a clean sheet, maybe getting some saves and bonus points. I would not be surprised if he gets between 7 or 10 points in this game week. Of course, I'm not going to be setting myself up for disappointment. Chelsea can still be a very inconsistent team, but in recent weeks they haven't conceded too many goals. Even against Dortmund, they were very unlucky not to get a result there. They probably will in the second leg, and Chelsea are definitely building something with some of these new signings making an instant impact, like Joao Felix and Enzo Fernandez. As was the case last week, my benching dilemma lies with the defence, and I'm going to go for Trippier at the moment, at home to Liverpool, who are the only team to have beaten Newcastle in the Premier League this season. And Newcastle have dropped off a little bit, a lot of draws, conceding unnecessary goals to the likes of West Ham and Bournemouth, but Trippier remains the best defender in the game. If there was ever a time to sell him, though, it would be now, with the fixture against Liverpool at home, who look better against Everton in Gameweek 23, not to mention the blank in Gameweek 25, and you can always bring Trippier back in. Of course, you'll lose some value tied up in him and all of that stuff, but you could sell him feasibly to maybe fund the move to Trent Alexander-Arnold or Robertson in Gameweek 25 if that's what you want to do, or even to get some more funds in the midfield and get the likes of Salah, who will probably be the best option in Gameweek 25 with the exception of Bukayo Saka. So Kieran Trippier home to Liverpool, it's not ideal, and I think Liverpool could score in this game, but I'm probably going to back him and start him. And the main concern here would be the second defender. Do I go for Ben White away to Aston Villa? I would expect him to get back into the starting lineup. Or do I go for Cucurella with Chilwell picking up another knock during the Champions League game against Borussia Dortmund? I might go for Ben White at the moment, but I have to say Chelsea have a better chance of a clean sheet at home to Southampton than Arsenal do against Aston Villa away. The former manager Unai Emery, I think, will definitely be right up for it, and I could see Aston Villa getting a result in this game and scoring at least a goal. So I'm very conflicted about this. I'm going for Ben White right now, but I could easily change this to Cucurella before the deadline. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I could see myself making one change from all of the players you see in my starting 11, and I think the most likely would be Cucurella coming in for Ben White. It could go wrong. Let's wait and see. The final defender, though, would be Luke Shaw. I'm not going to make the same mistake in terms of benching him as I did last week. At home to Leicester, who've looked really good recently with 8 goals scored in the last 2 games against Aston Villa and Spurs. I could see them scoring a goal or two against United, but you would back Manchester United to get the victory regardless, and Luke Shaw could still be involved from an offensive point of view. So I'm going to go for this back three. I'm not expecting too many returns, to be fair, especially with the clean sheets. Still not looking too shabby though, and let's see how my team also looks like for Gameweek 25 as well. I'm not expecting the same output as I got in Gameweek 23 from my midfielders, but I have confidence in Bukayo Saka, who scored in this fixture last season, a well-taken volley against Aston Villa. I'm hoping for more of the same in Gameweek 24 this time round, but I have concerns with the other midfielders, including Odegaard, who has been off it in recent games. I think he played relatively well against Brentford, but I just don't really have that sensational feeling that he's going to get the goals and assists. Let's see if that changes going into the next few game weeks, especially Gameweek 25 with that double, but I have some concerns about him, not to mention Mahrez, who could be benched against Nottingham Forest away in Gameweek 24, and if not, I probably would sense that he would be benched in Gameweek 25, so I'm pretty much sensing him to be benched in one of the next 2 Premier League games, and of course that will definitely weaken my midfield. He's a really good option when he starts, but sometimes he can be subbed off early or not start the game at all, as we all know. So I'm very concerned about Mahrez from a minutes perspective and Odegaard from a points perspective. The other midfielder that I have no concerns about whatsoever is the informed Marcus Rashford, who I would even consider for the captaincy against Leicester. Despite how good they have been recently, they still ship in quite a lot of goals, and Rashford could do really well, and he's just scoring in every single home game, it looks like. So this midfield 4 looks really solid, but there are some concerns going forwards with Odegaard and Mahrez. Saka and Rashford, though, look nailed on. They're in great form, especially with Rashford, and I'm expecting more big things to come from them. The front three speaks for itself. Harry Kane will be at home to West Ham. I would back Spurs to win that game and for Harry Kane to be involved. And he is still one of the best options in FPL this season, even until the end of this campaign, regardless of all the injuries Spurs have. But I am open to a move to maybe downgrade Kane and then fund a move to Salah in the midfield for Gameweek 25. I could always reverse that in Gameweek 26 or 27, but I am open to that possibility now, especially with Bentancur being injured. I want to see how he does and how Spurs perform against West Ham first before finalising this, but it is definitely in my plans, or at least a contingency plan for me to potentially execute depending on how things go over the next week or two. But Harry Kane is still a great option. Next up is Erling Haaland away to Nottingham Forest, and I'm not really that confident of a return for Haaland in terms of a mega haul. He can do it, of course, but Nottingham Forest have been decent recently despite their 2-0 defeat to Fulham, and you would expect City to score 2 or 3 goals. goals, but it could be the other wingers, the midfielders also popping in with goals. And with Erling Haaland, I know he scored a hat-trick against them early in the season, but it was a different Forest side as well. He probably will end up being my captain, unfortunately, but I wouldn't say he's by far the best option on paper this week, despite the fixture looking really promising and enticing on paper. The final forward is Ivan Toney at home to Crystal Palace, who have been awful this season, especially compared to recent campaigns where Crystal Palace can be a thorn in the opposition side. They did pretty well against Brighton in the last game week, but Ivan Toney at home to Crystal Palace, you would back him for a return there. And Brentford have been in great form. They're unbeaten since October in the Premier League, beating the likes of Man City and drawing away to Arsenal. So they've been really impressive, and I think Ivan Toney is still their best FPL asset. And going into Game Week 27, the only concern with Toney is that he's on 8 yellow cards, 2 more and he's suspended. So you could easily foresee him getting suspended for one of the games in 27, or even for the first game entirely going into that period. So that kind of puts you off from buying him altogether. Apart from the captaincy, there's one benching dilemma for me to resolve, and that's Ben White versus Cucurella. Apart from that, the team is settled in. I know Andreas and Botman can do well, but I'm happy to keep them on my bench, to be fair, and I think Cucurella is the most likely from those on my bench to get a clean sheet and a return, a 6-pointer. Of course, Andreas and Botman are better FPL assets overall. So the last thing to really resolve is the captaincy. I'm currently favouring Erling Haaland, with Marcus Rashford being my vice, but that could easily switch, and Harry Kane was also under consideration going into this week, but I'm now less convinced about him as an FPL asset, especially with Bentancur being out. And I think West Ham have also entered this with a bit of form under their belt, and they've been getting some decent results recently, drawing to Chelsea and also drawing to Newcastle. So they could be tough to beat and try to really frustrate Spurs, who I still expect to win the game, but I would favour the likes of City to score multiple goals against Nottingham Forest and Man United against Leicester. So that is my captaincy, my team selection, and also my bench. Now let's use FPL.team to show what my plans are for blank game week 25. Of course, it's not just a blank game week, it's a mixture. It's a blank/double, and that's why the free hit could be really well used in a game week like this. It's pretty much perfect for that chip, and this is the ideal scenario. But I am looking to save that chip for later in the season, and also just kind of use free transfers here. I'm not that interested in most of the assets, including Liverpool, Everton and Wolves. Arsenal are the only team that interests me from an FPL perspective, going for a double or triple up, but even then, they've been off form. So really looking at this game week, despite all the blanks and doubles, I'd be quite happy to even stick with 10 players or 11, not use the free hit, and just stick with something like this, which might look average, but still, I think the free hit will have better uses later in the season, because there's going to be better doubles, better teams involved as well with those doubles, and also you could use it in blank game weeks, which could be even bigger, such as game week 28 and 32. So in game week 25, my current plans is to bring in the likes of Kilman and either Tarkowski or a Liverpool defender like Trent, and displace the likes of Botman and Luke Shaw. But I'm also open, like I said earlier in this video, to selling Harry Kane and finding the funds to get Salah in the midfield, who for me could even be a consideration for the captaincy. It would be between him and Saka, but I'm also quite happy to go for 2 defenders and then bring in Shaw or Botman later down the line, especially after blank game week 28 as well. So Kepa would start here in game week 25 with Ben White, Kilman, Cucurella and Trent as the back four. Of course, that's not completely nailed in, and Trent and Liverpool have been absolutely awful this season, so I'm not that convinced about going for a Liverpool defender despite their double. Andreas Pereira, Saka, Odegaard and Mahrez would be the midfield four, and Harry Kane and Haaland up front. So those are my current plans, to make 2 defender transfers as I discussed in recent videos as well, so that hasn't changed. But what has is a potential plan B to get in Salah, and Harry Kane might have to be the fall guy in order to fund that. So let me know your thoughts about Game Week 25 down in the comment section below. Which players are you looking to bring in? For me, apart from Arsenal defenders, the best defender to bring in for double Game Week 25 is Kilman, but even then, I'm not expecting a clean sheet against Fulham or Liverpool, despite Wolves being very impressive under Lopetegui and in recent weeks. But definitely there's some things to iron out. Cucurella is someone I want to get rid of long term, and all the chips that I have yet to use, like the wildcard free hit and bench boost, I'm starting to plan those now, and I might use them very, very soon, primarily between game weeks 28 and 34. I'll let you know once I start confirming that and setting a solid foundation and a plan and set it in motion. Let's see how it goes. The captaincy in game week 25 I think will be very simple. I'd probably go for Saka, with Haaland being the vice, and of course Odegaard remains a good option. He's still better for bonus points than Saka, and to get double-digit returns, but Saka's been far more consistent in the last 4 game weeks, and he also looks the most likely Arsenal player to make something happen. So that's why Saka would be my provisional captain for Game Week 25. We'll discuss this more in the upcoming team selection videos, as well as everything else like the deadline stream and reaction stream. But thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to over 300 likes. Let's also push on towards 19,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and you, of course, become a patron or a channel member, patreon.com/DylanRCM, and you can sign up for as little as £3 per month for exclusive early access to my videos and a lot of other perks. So be sure to check all of that out, and also the Discord server and the FPL League. So there's definitely a lot of stuff there in the description down below for you. Take care, enjoy the football. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 24. Keep on enjoying FPL, most importantly of all, and I'll see you next time.